Hello everybody and welcome to the first Revit tutorial. Today's episode 1 will be on Revit filters. First off, what are filters? Revit defines filters as a way to override the graphical display and visibility of elements that share common properties in a view. What can I do with filters? You are able to control how elements look using graphical overrides to do things like change its color, visibility, line weight, and transparency in the view. Why should I use filters? Filters are a great way to do visibility and graphical overrides without increasing the model's file size as much as its alternatives, such as using work sets or adding extra families into the model. There are two ways to get to your filters menu. The first is to press VV on your keyboard, which will bring up your visibility and graphical overrides menu. Next, click on Filters. The second way to do it is to come over to your Properties menu, look down for your Visibility/Graphical Overrides line, and click the Edit button. Once again, you click the Filters tab, and you're there. Adding an existing filter is relatively easy. First, we go to our Filters menu. Then we click the Add button. From there, we select the filter that we want to add to the view and press OK. If you are looking to add a filter and it's not on the list, double check to make sure it's not already added to your view, as Revit will not let you add the same filter twice. Before using an existing filter, it's good to know what that filter is all going to affect on your view. To check on this, we click the Edit/New button. Under the Filters category, we select the filter that we're looking at. Then in the categories, we scroll down the list to see what categories are all checked and are going to be affected by this filter. As we can see in this particular filter, Panel A, electrical equipment is the only category that is checked, which means this will be the only category that is affected by this filter. Moving over to the filter rules, we see that the category electrical equipment has a filter that says if the panel name equals Panel A, it is going to select it. We will now use an existing filter to change the override color and visibility of these conduits that are coming out of Panel A here. I know that in the project there's already a filter created that will select all these conduits for me and allow me to change their visibility and graphical. To do this, let's go back to our filters, and let's find our filter that was created to select all of the conduits coming out of Panel A. As you can see, we can turn on and off its visibility, we can change its line overrides, its pattern overrides, and its transparency overrides, and we can also make it half-tone. In this example, we want to change its color. And let's make it half-tone. When we click this OK button, you should see all of the conduits that come out of Panel A are now that green that we selected, as well as being halftone. When creating your own filter, there are a few things you need to understand in order to make this process smoother. First, we need to know what category each object is that we're trying to filter. If we look at our electrical panel, for instance, we can see that it is part of the electrical equipment category. If we look at our conduit, we can see that's part of a different category called conduits. And if we click on our conduit fittings, we could see that that's part of a conduit fittings category. Next, we'll need to know what we're trying to do with our filter. Because filters are such a powerful tool, we could use them to filter things like conduit based on their size, material, what panel they're coming from, what room they're going to, etc. If we look in our filters category, we could see that we could turn on and off its visibility in a view. We could change its pattern, color, and line weight in a view. We could change its pattern surface. We could change its transparency, or we could make the objects halftone in the view. In our example, we're going to take any object that has to do with Panel B, and we're going to override its color so that way it stands out more in our view. Lastly, before we can begin making this filter, we need to actually have something to filter by in each one of these objects. For instance, if we look at the panel, we can see that I filled out that this panel is panel B by using the panel name category. If we click on the conduit, we can see that I turned the service type for the conduit to say panel B. So this will be the object that we're going to need to make sure that our filter is picking up. For our first example, we want to select any conduit or electrical equipment that has to do with panel B and override its color so it stands out in the view. To do this, let's go to our filters and let's click the Edit/New button. We're going to want to come down here and click the New Filter button, and we're going to want to name it something that pertains to what we're doing. So we're going to call this one Panel B Electrical Equipment. Now we want it to come over, scroll down, and find Electrical Equipment and check that category. In Revit 2019, they give us this nice OR option, which could be useful, but in our case we're going to stick with the AND as it pertains to all Revits. We're going to hit the drop down here, and if we remember from before, we indicated that panel B was panel B by using its name. We want to make sure that it equals panel B. This is very important that you type it in the same exact way, because this filter, when you use equals, will only work if you type it in the same way. If you do contains, you have a little bit more leeway where it doesn't need to be quite so sensitive, but equals is very case and spacing sensitive, so make sure you have it entered in correctly. Now we're also going to create a filter that is going to select our panel B conduits and fittings. So we can scroll down in the categories and select conduit fittings and conduits. Making sure that we still have and selected, we want to hit the drop down, and for our conduits and conduits fittings, service type was how we indicated it was coming from panel B. So we're going to go equals, and if we click the little drop down, we can also see what exact matches are under the service type for conduits. So we're going to check the panel B and press OK. Now that we have our two filters created, we should add them to the view. And now we can choose what we want to do with them. First off, let's just change the color for both of them, and let's turn them purple. And now the moment of truth. As we can see, all of our conduit changed to this purple color, but for whatever reason our electrical panel didn't. If we click on our electrical panel, scroll down, panel name, panel B, let's go back to our filter, and let's edit it. Panel name equals panel, oh, as I was talking about, I have an extra space in here, which is why it did not work. So if we hit the drop down like we did, we can see that panel B is one of our options. Let's check that instead. Press OK. And now you can see it works. Our panel turned the purple color as well. In this next example, I'm going to show you a way that you can use filters to replace things like putting stuff on different work sets to control their visibility in this view. Let's say we want to take all of our conduits that come from panel A and turn them off, so we're left with just our conduits from panel B. Let's take that one step further and say from our conduits that are coming out of panel B, we only want to see our conduits that are larger than 3/4 of an inch. We're going to do this in a couple steps here. So our first step is let's get rid of all these conduits that come from panel A. We're going to create a new filter. And actually, seems how we made this one for panel B that selected all the conduits. Let's just duplicate that. We'll rename it to say panel A conduit selection. Now we're going to come over to the service type, and instead of it equaling panel B, let's switch that to panel A. Now we'll add that onto our view. And what we can do is we can take this and we can turn off this filter, which is selecting all the conduits from panel A. We'll turn off its visibility, and bam, that just got rid of all of the conduits that had panel A typed in for their information, and what we're left with is just all the conduits from panel B. This replaces the need to create a separate work set and then put all of your conduits on panel A onto that work set and all your conduits for panel B on that work set, which over time you get a lot of work sets, and that creates a lot of confusion. They get misused, they add a lot of space to the project. So this is the very nice and lightweight way of taking and removing stuff from a visibility in your view. Next, let's take all of our conduits from panel B here and filter them out so that way we only show the ones that are larger than 3/4 of an inch. Go back into filters, edit new. We're going to create a new filter, and let's make one that selects 3/4 inch conduit. And then we're also going to end up making one that selects 1/2 inch conduit, as those are the two smaller sizes that are currently in our project. With this 3/4 inch conduit, we're going to scroll down and select conduit and conduit fittings. We're going to use this and feature here, and then once we get done quickly showing the two and ways, I'm going to show you the or way that's a lot faster in 2019. We're going to do conduit size equals 3/4 inch. Okay. We're going to go back in here. We're going to duplicate this. We're going to rename it. We're going to call it 1/2 inch conduit selection. Size equals 1/2 inch. Okay. We're going to add these two into our model. And we're just going to check to see if these work. Let's turn this one red, and let's turn our 1/2 inch cyan. Press OK. So as you can see, our 1/2 inch turned cyan, but none of our fittings seem to have turned colors. So let's take a peek at that. Conduit fittings. Oh, we can see right here, our size isn't the same as our size for our conduit. So we're going to have to create 2 more filters just for these fittings to make sure that we capture their size. So let's go back in here. We can take and we could duplicate this, and we will call this one conduit elbow selection. We will take this, size equals the size that our conduit fittings are. Press OK. Then what we'll do is we'll take and we'll duplicate this one. We'll rename it. We'll turn this to our 1/2 inch conduit. Elbow selection. Make sure the size equals with the size that we want. Add both of those. Turn this one red. I'll write this one to be cyan. There we go. Now as you can see, our runs from start to finish are doing the colors. So what we can do now is we can take our filters and we can just turn all of these off. And then what we will be left with will be all of our conduits that are larger than 3/4 inch. Now, that seemed like a lot of work making all of these filters and testing them, but now that we have them working, what we can do is we can take all of these filters that apply to this view right now, and we can make them part of a view template, which I will do in a future video. And basically what this allows us to do is make it so we can turn all of these filters on and off with one click of a button when we come over here and change the view template to be a view template that has all these filters preloaded in for us, so we don't have to do all of that work after we've done it the first time. Now let's go back at the new feature that 2019 has that makes filtering even easier. If we go back into our filters, we can now remove these filters that we made to select our 1/2 inch conduit and elbows, and our 3/4 inch conduit and conduit elbows. And we're going to compound both of those into one filter. So we're going to make a filter that is going to do 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch conduit. Selecting. We're going to scroll down. We're going to click conduit fittings and conduits. And now we're going to switch this to the OR. And what this is going to allow us to do is select all of those things that we did in 4 filters into 1. So let's hit the drop down here, and let's take our size, and let's do our equals and our 1/2 inch. And then let's add a rule that says if the size equals our conduit elbow size, let's add a rule on for our 3/4 inch conduit. Now we'll add one for our 3/4 inch elbows. So what this rule that we just built says is if any of these rules are true, it's going to select it. So if the size is equal to 1/2 inch, it's going to select it, or if the size is equal to a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch for the elbow, or if the size is 3/4 inch, or if the size is 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch for the other elbow. So what this is going to do is it's going to take all 4 of these that we needed separate filters before, and it puts them into one. So we'll take this, we'll add it to our view, and let's just check to see if it works. This is going to select both of them at once, and let's turn that to a nice blue. Let's just make sure it works. There are all of our conduits, and they're all blue. So now should know what to do, where we can take them and we can turn off their visibility, and they're gone. So we eliminated 4 filters with 1 just based on the new features that Revit 2019 offers. So as you can see, filters are a very powerful tool in Revit. We only use them in applications involving electrical, but they do work for all families and family types in Revit. Using and depending on filters more and more will help you improve your workflow, as well as help keep your model efficient by avoiding other alternatives when it comes to visibility and graphical overrides. I encourage you to use filters as much as you can, and eventually you will even be layering filters and using them more advanced than ways I showed you today. This will conclude episode 1 of the Revit tutorials. If you have any recommendations for future tutorials on Revit, please leave a comment below. If you found this video helpful, leave a like. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.